Navy Matters.
Thank you and welcome back here to HMTV in the Fog of War and Humanity. I have my special guest to the left of me, Frank D'Aversa, who just got done speaking about his days growing up in College Point, playing a little baseball, dealing with the Catholic nuns and aviation high school, and being on several different aircraft carriers, one which was in the Mediterranean during the Cuban Missile Crisis. We spoke to Frank about his cruise from California all the way to the Philippines and his time in the Philippines. Now, when do you find out that now it's your time to go and fight during the Vietnam War here?
We were still in Sanford, Florida, Naval Air Station, preparing for that tour of duty.
And you had that understanding, right? That you were most likely going to be going over there?
Absolutely, yes. We were actually, I would say, the first carrier to go over there on the Ranger, USS Ranger, CVA 61. And, we went with, just trying to do our duty.
Now, was that carrier compared to the other carriers, was there any pros and cons with that carrier? Because now you're really going into a war theater, in terms of Southeast Asia, Vietnam, off the coast. You're supporting the war effort right on the ground, right? The air war as well. What were the strengths of that carrier?
All the carriers, we all trained the same way. Constant training, carrier qualifications, new pilots coming on board, and train. That's why every carrier.
It was uniform, right?
Uniform.
So you can get guys from other carriers, and it would not take them long to understand what was happening.
The training was the same, which made sense.
Now, you go to Southeast Asia. Was that carrier fitted any differently than any other carrier that you were on?
No. But when we went over to Vietnam in support of the ground troops, we spent months, I tell you, out at sea, working 100 hours a week. And
just continued movement. Right?
Yes, and it was a job that we had to do.
Now, what year was that? Was it 62?
No, when we went to Vietnam, 64.
64.
Yes,
so I'm off by a year.
Yes.
So 64. Wow.
Yes, and we arrived over there, I believe, in October of 64. We went to Yokosuka, Japan, just to bring on supplies and everything. And then we sailed to South Vietnam for months, up and down, 24/7 flight ops.
Now, did you get close to North Vietnam? Were you like in the Gulf of Tonkin?
They never told the Gulf of Tonkin.
Yeah,
they never really told. And that's one of my arguments, because I'm considered blue water Navy, so I'm not eligible for many of the benefits. If you were in closer than 12 nautical miles, then you were eligible for all the benefits. If you were 12 nautical miles, 1 inch, no.
Yeah, it's not fair.
It's not fair.
Because you don't know, you don't know.
And what about the prevailing winds?
Sure.
And the aircraft coming back loaded with Agent Orange, we weren't allowed to wash them with fresh water because they needed the fresh water for the catapults.
Wow.
So now you're crawling around aircraft that were loaded with Agent Orange.
Was there naval guys that were similar to like your service? You're off North and South Vietnam at that time, because now you're looking at Agent Orange is so bad amongst the Vietnam vets.
Yes.
Right, with the cancer and everything.
We're still dying from Agent Orange 60 years later.
But is there guys like on the Navy decks and in the carriers that have been inflicted with that?
Yes, absolutely. That's
amazing.
why I feel that our government has to reevaluate that before we all die.
Amazing, right?
Yes.
That it goes that far.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, have you ever tried to declassify like your own records of the ship for that time to see?
Yes. Yes.
You know, like where
Yeah.
the ship was located or anything like that?
Yes, and I'm always fighting that, you know. But
See, you're kind of in a bad spot there because if you're too close to the coast, then you can't provide support
correct.
if the enemy boats and aircraft are attacking you guys. You're supposed to be back in the rear a little bit
Yes.
to provide that massive support, right?
Yes.
I mean, rear is you're not totally far away.
No.
But enough where you guys are protected as well, right?
Yes.
So,
But, you know, again, I was up on the roof. We called it the roof, or the flight deck. And we had aircraft coming back. My squadron, I remember one incident in particular. I'm watching the airplane come in, and from experience, you see their height. You could almost judge it. And I'm saying, wow, that guy looks low. And sure enough, he was low. They waved him off, came around again. So I'm watching him again. I'm saying, man, he looks low again. He hit the back of the ship
jeez.
with half the aircraft. The engines blew up. The landing gear collapsed. Airplane went down the flight deck on fire. Went over the side, but both guys punched out, and they survived. Thank God.
Amazing. Somebody was watching
But
them.
the noise, to this day,
It's horrifying.
If I hear a truck backfire, I jump. You know, it just, I lost a lot of my hearing in my right ear, which works out good because when I'm driving and my wife is next to me, I can't hear a thing she's
Sure.
saying. I just give a thumbs up.
Yeah.
Right.
The selective hearing, right?
Yeah.
So,
But no, I
but that
did
shows you though, like that PTSD is not only to the guys in the jungle, but
Right.
right.
Oh,
I
it's
mean,
so true.
it's extremely dangerous to be on the aircraft carriers itself. I mean,
Oh, absolutely. You know.
there's human error. There's
Yes.
planes
The
that get
cables
disabled, get
and
attacked,
and the cables break at times. And when they break, they sever limbs and everything. They kill guys.
and it goes right across the
right
flight
across.
deck. Right?
Yeah, it doesn't stop.
Wow.
Yeah.
So now, what does an average day look like? The war's starting up. It's getting hot. Both sides are not backing down from each other. How many flights are leaving an aircraft carrier or coming back
Well,
in terms of a day?
you have 80 aircraft on board, various types, various missions.
You got helicopters too.
Helicopters
you got reconnaissance.
go,
Right?
yes.
Fighter
Helicopters
planes.
go off first because if a plane goes in the water, they can rescue the crew.
Yeah, it's all search and rescue stuff.
Search
right?
and rescue. But we always had destroyers around us too. If a man fell overboard, they can recover him if things work out.
And was the destroyers part of the protection?
Yes.
Right, for the
always.
aircraft carriers too, right?
Always, yes.
And you probably had some submarines around
Yes,
also?
I
right?
believe we had a minimum 2 subs. And
Just to
every
keep an
now and
eye,
then-
right?
Yes, keep an eye. You had to protect the carrier.
So now, out of those, was it 80 or 8? What was the amount that you said? 80 aircraft?
80 aircraft, yes.
What was that almost maybe the average amount that might have taken off during the course of the day? And
I would say each launch, 35 aircraft,
Wow.
various missions. The A4 Skyhawk, which John McCain was shot down in.
Okay.
What a great aircraft. You know, it was small, but it carried a lot of bombs on it, you know. And then the Phantoms, the F4 Phantoms, what a great aircraft.
So you could look at those aircraft, and if you see a documentary, right, on the military history,
yes.
you kind of know the inner workings of those aircraft.
No doubt.
Right?
No
and,
doubt.
And you knew which planes were really good for the war effort, right?
Yeah, for each mission. You know, each aircraft had a mission, you know.
Did you know the pilots? Would you talk with the
My
pilots?
squadron, yes. Yeah. That's why, and I tell this story all the time. One of my squadron's aircraft was shot down at night. And I knew both crew members. The pilot was a lieutenant commander, and the bombardier navigator was an ensign, young guy. When they were shot down, we took three weeks to recover their bodies because
They passed away then, right?
yeah, it was so heavily concentrated with Viet Cong, we couldn't get in there to recover. And we finally brought them back to the ship. The pilot had requested to be buried at sea. He was from Texas. He was from Texas. The bombardier navigator is in Arlington.
Wow.
And he was from Connecticut.
And you have to really do something in terms of getting into Arlington. That's
yes, but what is interesting, every year for 60 years, I go to St. Patrick's Roman Catholic Church in Smithtown, which I'm a parishioner, and light a candle for them.
Wow.
On December 9th.
And what year was that? December 9th, 1964. Wow.
Yes.
What part of, was it North Vietnam or South Vietnam that they were shot in?
We weren't allowed to fly in Laos. Oh, yeah?
Laos and
I
Cambodia,
think that's where
right?
they were shot down.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. But those countries were so close.
Yes.
And they used the Ho Chi Minh Trail.
They
and
did big time.
it was a very different type of war
Yes.
than a lot of the older figures knew from
Yes.
World War II and I guess even Korea as well, to a degree,
But,
so.
one thing, I love John McCain, and what he did for our country. And he always complained, why are we always flying the same flight patterns? The enemy knows we're coming.
Sure.
They had patrol boats that looked like fishing boats, and they would radio the shore troops, Viet Cong,
That the aircraft were coming in?
They were coming, and they would fire everything and anything up in the air and hit the aircraft. Bullet holes, I was involved with repairing. I was a pretty good structural mechanic.
Let me ask you this here. Like, I was growing up, and I knew Mr. Kitson really well because I grew up with his son, Timmy.
Yes.
Played a lot of baseball together, right? In the middle part of the 1980s, there were a lot of Vietnam War films that came out. Was there any one film that reminded you of your own service?
Truthfully, I didn't like watching them because they brought back
some tough memories,
tough
right?
memories.
Was there any one that you just kind of stayed away from?
Well, I liked the one, We Were Young and We Were Soldiers.
Okay.
Mel Brooks.
Mel Gibson.
Mel Gibson.
Mel Gibson, right?
Not Mel Brooks. But yeah, that was a great movie, I thought. It depicted the Vietnam vet as a good
Dr. Lunati
person.
was a surgeon.
Yes.
I think he took care of some of those guys during that battle.
Yes.
Which was amazing, right? And he was with you guys for a long time. And
no doubt.
he wrote that book, what was it? Time Never Heals.
Yes.
Right? And all right, so now...
It's funny you say time never heals. Well, they just celebrated the end of the 50 years, the end of Vietnam War. It's never emptied. It's always
waiting
in our heads. Always. So it never ended.
Never ends.
No.
Right?
Certain things, and I didn't have it too bad compared to the boots on the ground guys.
Yeah, but the experiencers are still experiences. You're on an aircraft carrier.
Yeah.
You have planes that are fully loaded, fully fueled, all kinds of armaments taken off, coming back in.
True.
Choppy seas.
Yeah.
Look what you said with the catapult, that breaks,
Yes.
You don't know. It's
No.
it's you just spoke about the Agent Orange coming in. I always think of Agent Orange of just getting dropped in for the guys on the ground. Not always the aftermath of it coming back to the air crews and the whoever's in that area. So
But you were trained how to deal with those dangers. But when we came home, the way we were treated.
Oh, it was awful. It was awful.
That's why our slogan is never again will one generation of veterans abandon another.
Yeah.
You know.
So now you're in Vietnam. How long were you in Vietnam or in the waters in Vietnam for?
We were there for 10 months.
Wow.
We were
Almost a year,
extended.
right?
Yeah. But we caught on fire. One of our main machinery rooms caught on fire. So it kind of disabled the carrier
Okay.
to do its final mission.
What was that like?
Well, you're at general quarters all the time.
Yeah, because you're in a war.
You're in a combat zone.
Combat zone.
Yes. So, you know, every day we had drills. General quarters, this is a drill, man your battle stations. And then when there wasn't a drill, boy, you want to see guys hustle, you know, because you never know. Fire is the biggest enemy to a sailor on any ship.
At any time period.
At any time.
Yeah.
You know. But especially look at John McCain. His aircraft was hit by a Sidewinder missile that went off by itself and killed 134 guys.
Yeah.
In that incident.
Did you ever meet him before, McCain? Did you ever come close to meeting him? No.
No. But
have you ever had any reunions for any of the ships that you've been on?
Yes, yes.
And were they typically out of Norfolk or
New Orleans sometimes? New Orleans. Yeah, the heavy attack squadrons.
San Diego too, or
actually San Diego, the West Coast, they were all even number squadrons.
Okay. Yeah.
I was in Heavy 5, Heavy 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11 were on the East Coast.
How many carriers were you on? Just 6. For just 6 overall?
Yeah, in my career.
It's amazing.
Yes.
At the museum that we did, I'm going to try and get all the different carrier hats.
Oh, great.
And because floating, I mean, it's unbelievable. You know, it's just, it's like the thoroughbred of the Navy, you know, it's big, strong, tough, can move.
Yeah,
right?
yes.
It has many different abilities.
Yes, but it's a team.
It's a team. It is a team.
All the ships around protecting that big ship, you know.
So now, 1964, how old are you?
I was 20.
20 years old?
Yeah.
Wow.
On my way over to Vietnam. I turned 21 in
and
August.
You grew up pretty fast, right?
Well, I grew up when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I told you my life story. Yeah.
Losing your mom.
Yeah.
Taking care of your brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
And,
yeah. But, you know, so I was blessed that way.
Sure.
You know.
So now you leave, when do you leave Vietnam or the waters around Vietnam itself?
We left in May of 65.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, before you leave, right, what were some of the missions that were carried out? Was it fighter missions against enemy planes? Was it bomber?
Well, we were
air sea rescue.
We were a photo reconnaissance squadron. We flew a lot of mostly night missions because we had flasher pods that had 21 million candle power.
That could take pictures of the enemy.
Yes, and the movement of the enemy. And then when we came back to the ship, they had a photo lab. And then...
Was it over different points? I mean, would it be over a coastline?
Yes.
Ho Chi Minh Trail?
All over,
yes. Would planes venture up into North Vietnam as well?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there was a lot to it.
No doubt. Yeah, but trying to help keep everybody safe.
Sure.
Our troops on the ground.
And information is always key. Right?
Yes.
So,
yes.
Okay, so 1965.
Yes.
You're smack dab really at the start, heading towards now the middle of the war, right?
Yep.
Where do you end up in 1965?
We went back to my Naval Air Station, Sanford, Florida. And a month later, we're going back out to sea on the USS America.
And that's a carrier? Okay.
Yeah, for carrier qualifications and training, you know, for the pilots in particular.
That's the one thing that you notice. The American military, people could give it its criticisms and sometimes, could falter here or there. But man, there's a lot of training.
All the time.
Right? I mean, it's...
all the time.
And compared to other armed forces around the world,
I agree.
We might have our problems, but guess what? They're very, very well trained, and probably more so during a time of war.
No
right?
doubt. But, I owe kudos to the females that have joined the military because, we were kind of lagging behind. Guys joined the military. But then a lot of females stepped up.
And they can do a lot as well.
Yes.
And they proved themselves. And,
yes.
I was not a good rifle shot. There was a lot of women that were better rifle shot than me, I could run, but I was not a good rifle shot. And, and I gave those women, I would tell them that all the time. They'd always laugh, and, so it's...
I'm left-handed.
Yeah.
So when I shot a rifle, I'd get hit in the head with the cartridge.
I had to shoot lefty. They'd get so mad at me, I didn't know what the heck I was doing anyway, and they couldn't believe that. I was from Long Island, and I was such a bad rifle shot, so, they thought I was from the city and everything else, so. But, all right, so now you're on, you're training, right?
Yes.
On another aircraft carrier,
yes.
Right? And now you got to be towards the end of your time, right, with the Navy?
What happened, the Navy was shorthanded, Navy and Marine Corps. Sailors and Marines. They extended us involuntarily for 4 more months onto our contract. So I actually had 4 years, 4 months on my first enlistment. And then I decided to try the reserves.
Now, did the time go by fast? I mean, you were out at sea a lot and you were busy, right?
Yeah. But, again, I loved it. And that's why I put 30.
And you saw a lot of things from College Point to where did you do your basic? Was it at Great Lakes?
Yeah, Great Lakes.
Okay.
Yes.
You're an Italian kid during a Cuban Missile Crisis that ends up in Italy, then the Mediterranean.
Yes.
Then you're on several more different aircraft carriers. You have a tense amount of training.
Yes.
And then now you're on the West Coast. You go from California to Hawaii, to the Philippines, to Vietnam. I mean, also Japan.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
You have some good stories in terms of your buddy who punches a Marine in the mouth, who probably said to this day, I don't know how he didn't take my head off, right?
We ran faster than the Marine.
Yeah. I mean, you've had some very good experiences, but in some tough spots too. Right?
Yeah, but it was a team. It wasn't just me. I knew I could depend on all my buddies.
And that they were very well trained and
the same.
Serious, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And it's probably these stories, I would think, when you guys meet up for the meetings, right? Yeah. You get the meeting down, all right, this is where we need to be. We got to be at this school or this government building or this hospital, right? This parade, right? You guys just had the Southampton parade.
I was there.
But you guys are probably laughing on the side because you're saying, how the heck did we survive this? Or
but
and it's
all good though.
It's all good, right?
Yeah.
So now you get out in 65?
I got out.
Well, kind of, right?
Yes. October 65.
You do some reserve time?
Sorry. 4 months extension, February of 66.
Of 66?
Yeah.
And you didn't really care at that time for the reserve duty, right?
Well, what happened, I joined the reserves, and my E7, I said, Chief, back then the reserves weren't really utilized the way they were today or are today. So I went up to my E7. I said, Chief, I'm working for Pan American World Airways. When do I work on naval aircraft? He said, you're reserved. Go sit in the corner. It's all right. So 8 months later, I went home. So that gave me 5 years.
5 years. So now you get situated on your civilian side.
Yes.
You're getting a little bit older. You have your time in.
Yes. What was great about Pan Am, I love that airline, most of us were military guys. Most of us graduated from aviation.
It's like you working at Grumman.
Yeah.
Right? So
the Brotherhood there. And a lot of us were Vietnam guys back in '66. So it was like, welcome home.
Sure. And you have a lot in common.
Oh, so much.
You're right around the same ages.
Yes.
You're looking to start families and buy a home and do different things, right? So, all right, we're going to come back for a third episode with Frank here on HMTV. Please come back with this very, very interesting interview here on the Fog of War and Humanity.